Welcome back. This is the third part of this session on back to Eden. How do we get back to this original state that Adam and Eve enjoyed in the Garden of Eden? Well, we're not going to, obviously, right here on this earth, but we can do a lot of things for ourselves, as we've already shown you, that you can preserve your health, you can actually reverse some of your disease processes, have better health and better vitality. And we ended our last program with sugar and showing us just how much sugar the average American eats. Maybe not you, but a lot of people, this is the case. And we're going to offer you some options as we go through this program. On this particular chart, you'll see that it shows sugar consumption in North America. It's amazing. By the year 2000, I can't believe it, 2/5 of a pound every day for every man, woman, and child eating sugar. But interestingly enough, in the year 2000, sugar consumption had been going up dramatically, but then suddenly in the year 2000, it just kind of started going downhill again. What happened? Did everybody decide they're going to go into the new millennium by eating less sugar? Actually, no. You see on the little chart to the right there that while sugar started going down, white sugar, table sugar, cane sugar started going down, obesity continued to go up. And since obesity has been linked to refined carbohydrates and especially sugar, what was going on? How is it that sugar consumption started going down and yet obesity kept going up dramatically and continues to go up? Well, before we all reached this celebration of the year 2000, a new millennium, a few years earlier, the industry started supplementing, exchanging white sugar or cane sugar for something else, another sweetener. They started using high fructose corn syrup. So whereas the charts continued to go up for a while to the year 2000, they were introducing this sweetener substitute, high fructose corn syrup, and it was a lot cheaper. It had a better appeal, and people started using it more and more. On this chart, you can see that looking at different countries around the world, there's only a very small number of countries that actually use high fructose corn syrup in their packaged foods. Most of the world does not use this product, but here in America, we use it extensively. Almost half the sugar that's used in this country is high fructose corn syrup, and that is what is attributed to this this continuing obesity problem that we have in our country is largely attributed to this one, it's natural and yet is unnatural ingredient in our food. What can we do about it to reverse it? Well, we could go back to white sugar, I suppose, but there are other substitutes. And if you will train your appetite, you'll find that the natural sugars in fruits is actually adequate. You can come to the point where you enjoy the natural sugars and don't feel the craving for another jolt of sugar that will actually leave you in more of a depression. Now, not only was there a shift away from cane sugar, there was a shift away from all sugars, natural sugars altogether, or high fructose corn syrup. They went to start making these artificial sweeteners such as aspartame. We had saccharin. I remember saccharin first, and then there was sucralose. Down in this right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see a sugar molecule, glucose, and this is what our body uses. It's a simple carbohydrate. It slices off like you would slice the slices of a loaf of bread. Each one slices very easily, and they have these molecules that are easily adapted to the cells for energy. Very simple molecule. But when you look at the artificial sweeteners, you see they're very complex. There's nothing symmetrical about them at all. There are ingredients in there that are actually toxic to our body. A few years back, a book was written called The Taste That Kills. Excitotoxins, the taste that kills. The doctor was Dr. Russell Blaylock. He was a professor of neurosurgery at the University of Mississippi, And in this book, he shows that these excitotoxins, which also include these artificial sugars, have some very negative consequences to us. Now, these aren't something that you would take out of the sugar bowl and add to your food, or things that you'd actually put into your recipes that when you're cooking. These are ingredients that are put in by these large food companies into foods, and you'll never see them. They're in the foods. Of course, one of the biggest ones is diet sodas. And you look around when you go to the shopping market, and how many people will leave with their shopping carts full of these diet sodas, and yet, are they losing weight? Are they skinnier? No, they're not. They're bigger, and they're bigger on these diet sodas. Why? Because of these artificial sugars that are creating cravings for other fatty foods. Instant breakfasts, sugarless gum, juices, laxatives, drugs and supplements, chewable vitamins, breath mints, frozen desserts, and 6,000 other products that are out there on your grocery shelves. And what are the consequences? This neurosurgeon has linked this product, aspartame, which is found in NutraSweet, Equal, and Canderel. He truly believes that there is a link between these additives to MS, Lou Gehrig's disease, memory loss, schizophrenia, epilepsy, Alzheimer's, headaches, migraines, depression, anxiety attacks, and fatigue, and so forth. How many people are suffering from these symptoms? And if they would review what they're eating and drinking, and if they could remove these items from their diet, from their lifestyle, some of these very debilitating symptoms would disappear in a very short order. And it wouldn't cost them anything. It wouldn't cost them a psychoanalyst. It wouldn't cost them antidepressants and all these other psychoactive drugs. Again, coming back to Ellen White and her emphasis on health, she writes in the book, Ministry of Healing, often intemperance begins in the home. By the use of rich, unhealthful food, the digestive organs are weakened, and a desire is created for food that is still more stimulating. So you see this mechanism: stimulation, depression, stimulation, depression, stimulation, depression. Thus, the appetite is educated to crave continually something stronger. The demand for stimulants becomes more frequent, more difficult to resist. The system becomes more or less filled with poison, and the more debilitated it becomes, the greater is the desire for these things. So you see this addiction habit developing. She goes on to say, one step in the wrong direction prepares the way for another. Many who would not be guilty of placing on their table wine or liquor of any kind will load their table with food which creates such a thirst for strong drink that to resist the temptation is almost impossible. Wrong habits of eating and drinking destroy health and prepare the way for drunkenness. And stop and think. I know how many mothers, how many grandmothers, how many aunts are listening to this program, how many wives. If the curtain could be pulled back and you could see that by the food that you're putting on the kitchen table in the morning is actually creating an almost unconquerable craving for something stronger that will eventually lead one day to a craving for alcohol, for other drugs. How many wives would shudder to think that what they put on their kitchen table is creating that drunken monster that comes home in the evening and sometimes beats the family? How many mothers would weep? How many grandmothers would weep if they know that by giving their children all these sweeteners, these concentrated foods, that they're going to turn their lovely granddaughter, their handsome young grandson into a drug addict one day because of the food they put on their kitchen table? I think they would shudder and immediately decide, I want what is best for my children. I want what is best for my grandchildren. I'm not going to continue to give them these foods that are going to create monsters by creating an appetite for drugs and alcohol. You think this is just hypothetical thinking? Well, let's look at science again. We want to go back to science. Loma Linda University Public School of Health did an experiment with rats. And they had 3 groups of rats, and around these cages of rats, they put these beakers with water mixed with 10% alcohol. And the rats were free to drink from whichever container they wanted. They put them on 3 different diets. The first group had sweet rolls, donuts, hot dog, mustard, pickles, relish, basically the typical American diet. The second group was basically just standard laboratory chow for rats, and the third diet was a milk vegetable diet. And you can see in the first diet program, the typical American diet, they consumed 52.9% of their fluids that had alcohol in it. Clearly the diet was creating an appetite in these rats for alcohol. When the middle diet, just a typical laboratory chow, 18% of the fluids were mixed with alcohol, but the last diet, the milk vegetable diet, 2.7%, and the researchers said that was probably a mistake. The rats tasted the alcohol in the water, this polluted water, and they did not want this polluted water anymore. And they would go over to the other beakers and just drink pure water. Now, on this graph, you can see it took those rats 6 weeks to get up to that craving of almost half and half alcohol and water in their liquid consumption in the daytime. The laboratory chow, it went up slowly, and the milk vegetable diet, really no craving at all. Now, they took the group 1 rats and they put them on the vegetarian diet, and in 1 week, just 1 week, they lost their craving for alcohol. Is that not amazing? Diet created the appetite for alcohol, created the habit in these rats, and diet reversed it. But the second time, they put them back on the group 1 diet, the typical American diet. It didn't take them 6 weeks to get back up to their former appetite for alcohol. 1 week, and they were back up to their previous consumption of alcohol. Now, I actually saw this lived out one time. We were running a family care home. We took in people who were sick. And one day the local hospital called us and said, you know, John, would you take in this man? He's been beaten within an inch of his life. He's worried that his friends are going to come back to finish the job, and he's deathly afraid, and he needs to leave town. We've kept him in here in the hospital as long as we can. Would you take him out to your place out in the country for a while? So we went into the hospital. We signed him out, took him back to our place. We put him on a vegetarian diet. He went out with me and worked in the garden during the daytime. He attended our family worship. After 1 week, he came up to me and he was almost mad. He said to me, John, what are you doing to me? And I said, what do you mean? He said, John, I have no craving for alcohol. More than that, I have no craving for tobacco. More than that, I have no craving for drugs. What are you doing to me? So I explained to him, well, you know, it's just a change in your diet, and a very simple lifestyle has taken away this craving. Well, my friend, somewhere in the next few days, got a craving for a hamburger. And since I wasn't going to give him a ride, he knew he had to walk, and he had to walk a long ways. I think it was about 5 miles up to the local neighborhood restaurant, and he got himself a hamburger, fries and condiments, and a Coke. And guess what he came back with? He came back with a cigarette in his mouth. Whereas the day before, hours before, he had no craving for any of these things. The diet changed all that in just a twinkling of an eye. It does happen. You know, someone said that heredity loads the gun. When it comes to health, heredity loads the gun. Okay, my father smoked cigarettes, so it's probably likely that I will have a craving for alcohol, or excuse me, for tobacco. He drank too, so it's probably I'm going to have an appetite for, or a thirst for alcohol. And it's true, it happened. But really, lifestyle is what pulls the trigger. We can load the gun, but it's like playing Russian roulette with a loaded gun. You take a gun, you load it up, and you put it to your head, and you pull the trigger, and you hope that the bullet will misfire. People are playing with their health in this fashion every day, hoping that somehow they're going to beat the odds. That somehow I can smoke this cigarette, somehow I can eat this food, and it's not going to have a negative consequence on my health and my strength, or my spiritual connection with God. And that's where a lot of Christians make a fatal mistake, that they think that they can continue on in their previous lifestyle and they can still have a close walk with God. It will not happen. Real food or stimulants. The Bible says in Isaiah chapter 55:1, "Wherefore do you spend your money for that which is not bread, whole wheat? Your labor for that which does not satisfy? Hearken diligently unto me," the prophet says, "and eat that which is good, and let your soul delight itself in fatness," natural fatness. It's not good to be skinny. We need to have meat on our bones. In fact, tests have shown that people who are 5% above their ideal insurance weight actually are better insurance risk. They live longer than people who are underweight. So again, we need to have good health, good vitality. But most people today, at least when I look around and I see obesity, I see sallow complexions, I see unhealthy hair, I can see that people are not healthy. I hear coughing and wheezing. People's eyes are bloodshot, and they do not know how to break free of this habit. And when I go to the prison, and I visit a prison, I start talking to these prisoners, and I say, "How did you used to eat?" And sure enough, their lifestyle had an influence on their addictions that led them into crime, and now they truly are behind bars. But God has a solution for us, and the solution is Jesus. The test in the Garden of Eden began on appetite, and Jesus took on that same battle for you and for me, and He won the battle. By His faith, we can overcome as well. Jesus out in the wilderness, emaciated, tired, not having eaten and drank any water for 40 days. That's when the devil came to him, not like he did to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, where they had everything, they were healthy, clear-minded. Jesus takes up the battle where you and I lost, and He wins that battle for us. When the devil came to him with his psychology, now did the devil come to him with psychology? Not just everyday psychology. The devil came to Jesus with Christian psychology. Jesus was a Christian. And so he quoted Scripture to Jesus. How many Christian psychologists today think that they are doing something different than the devil did? But after all these years of practice, don't you think the devil came to Jesus with a high-powered psychology to get him to fall to temptation and to sin? Of course he is. And here we are 2,000 years closer to Jesus' coming. Is Satan going to use more psychology on us today? Clearly he is. That's his method to lead us down this road. Ellen White wrote in the book Counsels on Health, "Greater reforms should be seen among the people who claim to be looking for the soon appearing of Christ." There are Adventists around the world who are looking for Jesus to come soon. Some of them are Seventh-day Adventists. Some of them are Jews. Some of them are other Christians who keep the Sabbath. And yet, their lifestyle does not look like they're preparing to go to heaven. It looks like they're eating and drinking like the world and thinking that somehow their minds will be prepared for the great test that is going to come on God's people at the end of this world. There are those who ought to be wide awake to the danger of meat eating, who are still eating the flesh of animals, thus endangering the physical, mental, and spiritual health. Many who are now only half converted on the question of meat eating will go from God's people to walk no more with them. Now, I was raised on a cattle ranch. I worked on one of the biggest cattle ranches in Florida. I worked on a large cattle ranch in Canada. I saw what meat eating can do, and I also saw what went to market. A farmer is not going to just bury his dead cow in the field because it's got a tumor on its neck. He's going to take that tumor off and he's going to send it to the slaughterhouse. He's not going to, it'd be like throwing a $1,000 bill in the garbage to that farmer. He is not going to waste $1,000. He'll cut that tumor off and send it to market. There is more and more disease in animals today than ever has been. We're fortunate where I live in cattle country now that all the animals are range-fed. They're grass-fed animals. They're very healthy. They're not raised in feedlots. They get exercise every day. They're not exposed to pollution. They're probably the healthiest beef in this country. But that's not necessarily what you're going to buy at the market. You're going to buy diseased animals from all kinds of slaughterhouses that are pumped with hormones, steroids. You know, they actually put arsenic in the feed to create an appetite so that in the feedlots, they'll eat more food and bulk up faster. Arsenic. Where does that arsenic end up? In the meat. And where does it end up if you eat it? In you. Is arsenic a poison? It truly is a poison. God is trying to lead us back step by step to the original design. What is that? That man should subsist upon the natural products of the earth. Among those who are waiting for the coming of the Lord, meat eating will eventually be done away. Flesh will cease to form a part of their diet. We should ever keep this end in view and endeavor to work steadily toward it. I did not become a vegetarian overnight. It took time. And I encourage those of you who are listening to this program to think this thing through carefully. Jesus says, count the cost before you go to a war. Sit down and count the cost. Realize that you have to change things. These things are not going to happen overnight. Give yourself time for your body to acclimatize to a new lifestyle. And in the end, you will have better health, better strength, and better vitality of your mind. The broad road or the narrow way? Which is it going to be? Which is the one that leads to life? When you get to, when you get to heaven, it is going to be a brand new body and a brand new mind. But you can have a little bit of Eden right down here on planet Earth. Here is that African lion and that lamb that we saw at the beginning of our program. They've lived out their natural life, probably a little bit longer in captivity, but they lived out this life, well, for him, with no meat. He's still a vegetarian. And here they've grown old together and they're still pals. He's never had lamb chops even once in his whole life. He's a healthy lion. He's an old lion. It says in Scripture, Isaiah, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. I have seen people revise their lifestyle in their 60s and can actually outwalk young men who have a terrible lifestyle and can't even walk. You can't even run 100 yards without being out of breath. The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and the child shall lead them. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the earth. Yes, Eden restored. God is going to give us new bodies that can run 100 miles and not be out of breath, can turn around and run back and not be out of breath, and can do that all day long if that's what we want to do. For the time being, here we are right now, and we still have a ways to go. But in heaven, as we read in the prophecy there, nobody's going to be hurting anybody. Children will take a long time to grow up. They won't be pumped with steroids and hormones in the food that they eat. They'll enjoy childhood for a long time. The animals will cavort with them. Nothing will fade, nothing will die. We've been so taken with how children gravitate to these talks on health that we've developed a set of program booklets called God Made Me, teaching children about their bodies early on so that they can form these habits while they're young, rather than waiting till they're old when it's harder to change our ways. We did this in Africa. We put on these programs for the children. These children went home and actually educated their parents. They'd ask their father, do you know where your kidneys are? No, I don't know where my kidneys are. Well, do you know how many bones are in your body? There's 106. And the parent says, well, where did you learn this? Oh, at those programs called God Made Me. Oh, really? Well, I want you to go back there and learn more and come back and teach us. Isn't that interesting? The children shall lead them. We're seeing that actually happen. We have a great wedding feast to go to in heaven. God's inviting us to that banquet table. He wants us to be His instruments here on earth to go out there and invite people to this great table, this feast. And what's it going to look like? It's going to look grander than any royal wedding that's ever been attended here on planet Earth. Whether it's gold plates and gold spoons and cutlery, God has something that is as far as you can see down this table, and not one thing on that table will be flesh. It will be all the product, the natural products from the trees of life and the other beautiful fruit trees. Everything that will promote health and strength for eternity. Our health will never get old. So Jesus says, you too, I want you to go out and I want you to share what you've learned. And I hope that you will practice some of these things so they'll become a reality in your life. You will feel better health. You will want to then go out and share it with other people. And they will come back to you, as we've had people come back to us and say, thank you so much for sharing what you did. I'm stronger for it. I'm healthier, and my children are healthier as well. Well, this brings us to the end of our program, Eden Restored. Our next program will be Ordained of God. How God not only Jesus ordained these 12 men to go out, but Jesus wants to ordain us as lay people to go out into the communities, to go out into maybe foreign countries and teach what we've learned so that they can have good health that will direct their minds to God the Creator, who can bring them to heaven itself. Thank you very much for being with us through these programs, and I would like to invite you back for our next one, Ordained of God. Thank you.